Welcome to the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa room.
The beams you see in this room were dated to the First and Second Temple period, and they came from just half a mile away from here, from the Temple Mount.
Exactly 99 years ago today, in Jerusalem, there was a massive earthquake, which uncovered beams that possibly were part of the First Temple. And what if I told you these beams are strewn on the Temple Mount, exposed to the elements, the rain and the snow, and are slowly disappearing? So in this video, we're going to unpack how these beams were discovered, where they were stored for all these years, and furthermore, what's the fate of these beams and why they are waiting just by the Golden Gate, by Sha'ar HaRachamim, the place where Mashiach will come through. So let's dive in.
In 1927, an earthquake ripped through Jerusalem and nearly collapsed one of the most sacred structures on earth. When British engineers tore open the damaged roof of the Al-Aqsa Mosque to rebuild it, they found something nobody expected. Massive wooden beams, some over 42 feet long, hidden behind plaster and whitewash for centuries. Dozens of them, ancient, blackened, carved with symbols nobody recognized.
Welcome to the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa room.
This is so surreal. We've done a video about this 2 years ago.
All right.
I only had pictures from the British Mandate in black and white, and I can't believe we're looking at the real stuff. It's real. It's real. Everybody who said, hey, those are just pictures, here they are.
Yeah. And it's amazing that actually people can touch it. Please don't touch it,
Okay.
but theoretically, it's open, right? So the story is that in July 1927, there was an earthquake, a big earthquake that made a lot of buildings collapse. One of these buildings was the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the roof of it collapsed. Immediately there were restoration works done, and during these restoration works, some of the ancient materials that held the roof and held different structures were removed and replaced by modern and more stable ones. Now, I would say that the British Department of Antiquities used this opportunity also to preserve these materials. So what you see here are different wooden beams, decorations, different plaques from the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, the interesting side of it is that some of these wooden beams have writing in Greek.
Wait, that is Greek, isn't it?
That's Greek,
right here.
That is Greek.
And this is from Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Yeah.
So how is it that you have Greek script on a wooden beam in Al-Aqsa Mosque? How is it possible if it's a Muslim mosque, if it's built a long time ago? Why would there be Greek script? How do you explain that?
So that is, the writing mentions different patriarchs or bishops from the Christian era of Jerusalem, from the before Islamic period, from the Byzantine period. And the story is probably that these beams were in the field, perhaps destruction of a Byzantine church, and what the Muslim builders did, instead of carving new beams, they went to a site of a destroyed church and collected these beams. And of course reused them for this new building that they built.
So basically what you just said means that when they were constructing the Al-Aqsa Mosque, they would have reused beams from a nearby church structure. Okay.
Yeah. Of course, obviously you can see the Greek script, you can read it. However, in modern times, scholars were not confined by only just reading the script. They took samples from the beams and sent it to the carbon-14 analysis. And here we have a real big story, because a few of these samples came with surprising result. And the result takes us back not to the Byzantine period, but there are several beams that are dated to the First Temple period. First Temple period, 8th century before Common Era. Unbelievable. Some of these trees are cedars, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are oak trees, and it also kind of resonates the biblical story about the Temple of Solomon, right? How he brought cedars from Lebanon, right, in order to build the temple. Now, I wish we would have that carbon-14 analysis correlate with the cedar beams, but unfortunately, as far as I know, the beams that were dated to the first temple period actually were not cedar.
So when I was reading the reports, what did it say? Some of them were cedar of Lebanon. Or
Yeah,
maybe...
yeah, yeah. But these particulars that were dated to the first temple period are not.
I see. Okay, I did not know that.
And here's the thing that should shock everyone and stop them in their tracks. You see, not only did the builders of Al-Aqsa Mosque use wood that was possibly first temple from King Solomon's temple, there is an effort by historians now to cover up the truth of what was uncovered in 1970 by the Weizmann Institute, that this actually was First Temple remnants that was found.
But here's where things get terrifying. A small number of beams returned dates that were radically older than everything else. One oak beam dated to approximately the 10th century BCE. A cypress beam dated to the 7th century BCE. These are not Byzantine, they are not Roman, they are First Temple period, and their survival represents a staggering 1,500-year journey through the construction history of Jerusalem before they were finally sealed inside the mosque's ceiling.
The collection of which is covered up there with the plastic, black-colored plastic. These are the leftovers of the wooden beams which were kept underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they originate from the ceiling of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. These wooden beams, they were dismantled in the 1920s. In the 1940s, some of them were removed to the Rockefeller Museum, especially the more artistic ones, which have a museum appearance. Some others were taken into the Islamic Museum of the Temple Mount. Some others were stored in the different tunnels underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the tunnels of the double gate and the triple gate. From there, in the 1990s, they were removed and were exposed to the elements on the outside in the southern part of Temple Mount. During that time, about half of them disappeared. Some of them were sold to Armenian wood merchants, and some of them found their way into one of the settlements in the land of Benjamin, where from some of them were stolen and burned up by some kids. In the 1970s, it was a professor of botanics of Tel Aviv University, Ms. Nili Lipschitz, who took some of the beans and had some C14 checks on them, and she found out that some of the beams are cedar of Lebanon, some of them are cypress trees, some of them date back to the First Temple period, some others to later periods. In any case, still later, one member of the Temple Mount Sifting Project, who is currently working on a doctoral thesis on the wood from inside the Temple Mount, found that one of those wooden beams has carvings upon it which are typical to the late Roman period. So it is part of a probably a shrine, pagan shrine of the days of Adrian, maybe the shrine of Jupiter Capitolinus, the god of the Capitolian Trinity. Now this wood is of utmost importance. Unfortunately, it is again a matter of politics, and therefore it is exposed to the elements here and not in any museum. They do not allow to do archaeological checkings in these pieces of wood, which would be of great importance.
And this is where the Bible snaps into sharp focus. 1 Kings chapter 5 describes an extensive commercial alliance between King Solomon and Hiram, the Phoenician king of Tyre. Hiram's administration monopolized the harvesting of Lebanese cedar and cypress. According to both the biblical text and the historian Menander of Ephesus, quoted by Josephus, the timber was assembled into massive rafts, floated down the Mediterranean coast to the port of Jaffa, and hauled overland to Jerusalem. What the DNA analysis confirmed is that the physical supply chain described in the Bible left a genetic signature that survived for nearly 3,000 years inside the ceiling of a mosque.
This is a very sad reality, that here we have possibly remnants of the first Temple of Solomon that were used and robbed and used to build the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And now an earthquake destroys it. We run carbon tests. We prove that it's actually part of the Beis HaMikdash, most likely. And yet, the parts that we are left with, the few parts that we even gain access to, that are not in a museum, are being left under a cloth on the Temple Mount. You know, if you think about the Kedusha this may have, the holiness in this wood, and we just allow it to be destroyed. So if we want to think about the Golus that we're in, the exile that we're in, you know, even in Eretz Yisrael, we still don't have the Har HaBayis. Now, we have control of military, but we should be able to bear witness to the world that our Torah is true, that we will return and we will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. B'mheir v'yameinu. Thank you for watching. Shavua Tov, Shalom, from the holy city of Beit Shemesh.